also part of what it is so for the first 3 months of the year, like I will try to significantly cut back on caffeine, so I really haven't been drinking coffee, and it's just like, holy shit.
Well, that's the real reason. You should have started with that. I'm really tired because I cut back on coffee.
It's like, oh, Jesus.
We had this, like, well, maybe it's some pseudoscience bullshit. No, it's because you're not drinking caffeine. Golly.
So I'm just like, oh, man, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, what are we going to do today? How about that? Because today's your topic, because something has sparked your interest and set your mind afire, as I believe.
Yeah, so today we wanted to discuss the latest earnings call that EA had for their investors. So this would be the Q3 fiscal 2019, which is basically the most recent holiday quarter.
To which everyone who just fell asleep at that. No, wait, hold on. It's interesting. Don't leave just yet.
No. So I guess the headline that comes out of this is well, the main one that I think is most Bioware specific is the fact that EA CEO Andrew Wilson said specifically that EA putting in single player into their games is essentially bad for sales. That's not even me paraphrasing. I mean, that's almost an exact quote from what both he said and their chief financial officer said this. The context for it was that they were talking about Battlefield 5's results, but this is not the first time they have expressed sort of doubt around single player, and they said it multiple times on this call. So one of the things that you might see is, so this is a direct quote from Blake Jorgensen, where he says, changes to Battlefield 5 led us to move its launch into a more difficult window, and prioritizing the single campaign over Battle Royale also hurt sales. Mm-hmm. That's as direct a quote as you're going to get, right? Prioritizing single player campaign over Battle Royale hurt sales. And that's a theme that's pretty much common whenever they talk about Battlefield, that it did not have a Battle Royale mode at launch. And now they're basically scrambling to get one in there as an update, as a patch, which is also what they talked about. And I don't know, I as I was listening to the call, I could not shake the feeling that what I was listening to was almost like what an EA hater would write if they were trying to write a fake transcript. Like, it's EA explicitly saying, like, single player, story driven, not good, but Battle Royale and microtransactions are great. And that's kind of shocking, because I don't think that it's inconsequential that this is what they're talking about. Specifically, I think that when they list these things, for a lack of Battle Royale and an inclusion of single player as being the reasons why a game did not perform well, their investors are basically going to remember that. They're going to remember that, and it's going to come up in future earnings calls when you have a primarily single player game like traditional Bioware games. Investors are going to go, hold on, wait a minute. You told us that this is something that doesn't work. Why is this something that your developers are doing? Why aren't you pushing Bioware more towards Battle Royale, more towards live services, more towards any sort of thing other than a complete holistic single player experience? And so that is probably like the top. There are other things that we could glean and kind of dive into, but that's probably like the high level headline that I would bring to people's attention. Is that they've now stated a strategy. This is not just like a one-off comment. The fact that they talked about it multiple times during the call, and the fact that they basically threw single player under the bus to explain why the third quarter was not a good quarter.
Mm-hmm. Now, real quick, I want to throw this in here while it was kind of still relevant, but good job on like actually reading the goddamn thing. And, like, finding this out, like, you see on the YouTube all the time, the quote-unquote EA haters, and, like, you know, all the stupid shit they come out with clickbait, and not one of them has picked up on this yet, you know? Like, this is the type of stuff that you think they would talk about, but I actually haven't seen anyone talk about it yet other than you.
A couple have, but they kind of did oversimplify it, right? They basically just focused in on one quote, which granted is the most important quote, which is, you can take your pick. There's 4 or 5 of them that are basically the same as the one that I just gave. Mm-hmm. And they just zoomed in on that and then proceeded to talk about EA the way that they've always talked about EA, which I will admit is slightly more valid in the light of this. I've always tried to sort of balance things out and sort of speak caution. And I mentioned this in my video, it's like there's no point in trying to backpedal off of what EA said. That is a clear, explicit statement. They do not like single-player games. I mean...
Now, so I did end up reading all 16 pages, which, like, I don't know business. I did not go to business school.
Is it 16 pages?
It's 16 pages of the transcript.
Oh, yeah.
The transcript, at least. I don't know if there's more of it. But, which that does include, like, a cover page or whatever, so maybe it's, like, 50. Whatever. Point is, when I was reading it, I didn't get, like, as much doom and gloom as I thought I would, I guess. I read it more as, like, they didn't... It kind of sounded like they were trying... And maybe this is... I fell for the joke or whatever. But they didn't like single-player game that they had made for Battlefield 5. And, like, reading reviews for Battlefield 5 and, like, user reactions for the Battlefield 5 single-player... A lot of people didn't like it, were disappointed by it, so it kind of sounded like what EA was saying was also what kind of fans were saying, was that maybe they shouldn't have even have the single player part in it because it didn't actually give that good of a draw, is kind of how I read it. And then at the same time, like, I don't know if I can then extrapolate, oh, EA hates single player all the time, because they were actually praising The Sims 4 quite a lot during it. So I don't, and like Sims 4 is single player, right? I'm not crazy on that.
I don't know what... I honestly have not played Sims in years. I don't know what, if any, multiplayer or live services aspects they have in there.
I really thought it was really just single player. Maybe I'm wrong, but because I have not played the new one. But they were saying, like, how good it was doing and how they plan to release, like, 20 more content packs, which, number one, holy shit, that's a lot. Like,
yeah.
20 packs for just the next year? Jesus Christ. But, like... That sounds like a decent, healthy lifestyle for The Sims 4, and that was released however many years ago. So, like, I didn't really get a sense of EA hates single player. EA just hates the single player that was attached to Battlefield 5 and thought a Battle Royale mode would have fit the game better. And I haven't played the game, but it kind of sounds like fans of Battlefield 5 were kind of on that route too. Like, they weren't very impressed with the single player that was put on there.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely part of it. So one thing I will say too is that if people go out and listen to the call themselves or read the transcript, one of the things that's helpful is if you can contextualize stuff like this against, primarily against other EA calls. That's the main thing you want to do. But I'm a nerd and I like this sort of stuff. And so I've always, like, whatever company I've ever worked for, I pay attention to this sort of thing, or even just companies that I like, I pay attention to this sort of thing. One of the things you have to realize is that there is a ton of euphemistic language in a lot of this stuff. Because of certain SEC rules, it's not allowed to be, and it's kind of, most companies go right up to this line, you're not allowed to mislead people, you do have to disclose when things aren't good, etc., etc. But as much as is legally possible, they try to, of course, dampen things when it's not good. Mm-hmm. So it's I guess sort of like my ears are sort of turned up a little bit, like I turned the volume up a little bit because you're so used to hearing really, really sort of soft, nondescript, vague language that to me stuff like the inclusion of single player instead of battle royale hurt sales. That's like fireworks going off to me. That's like a megaphone to me of like, whoa, like you normally don't see statements that clear because of the type of rhetoric that's typically used on these calls. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why it just like blew up to me where I'm like, oh shit, that's not good.
Yeah, and I definitely don't have that. I don't speak the language, so to speak. That is definitely something I'm missing because this is the first EA report I've read through. And there was a lot of times I'm like, I read the sentence 3 times and I don't know what this means.
And then another thing comparatively is just like, so this is where it might help to sort of contextualize a little bit with the overall call or the overall quarter and not just the single player comment and not just Bioware, because I think that what we're looking at now is a little more unique for a variety of reasons. So the quarter wasn't good. For Battlefield didn't do as well. the FIFA is a major pillar for EA. FIFA, Madden, and the Star Wars license are like big time for them. And Battlefield is fairly big, but it's not as big as any of those three things. So FIFA year over year is a little bit flat. And mainly that's because FIFA 19 sales have not been as strong compared to FIFA 18. They projected a slight bump, which is what they've always had. Like the newest FIFA game always sells a little bit more than the last one. Mm-hmm. And FIFA was actually, it might have been either, for all intents and purposes, let's just call it flat. If it was down in such a negligible way, you may as well call it flat. Which is actually not good for them because they were projecting a slight increase. And a lot of the reason why they think that is that during the World Cup, FIFA 18 sold a higher number than they've ever sold before by a pretty significant margin. So what they think happened is that they saturated the 18 market so much that there's no way you were going to get all of those people to want to buy a new soccer game next year. You might have a lot of them that like to buy it every year, but you may have also gotten people that bought their first FIFA game. You may have just gotten a lot of new customers who aren't quite ready for that annual release cycle yet. So their projections came down a little bit on FIFA, and it's really telling to note that a game like Battlefield or a game like Mass Effect Andromeda could totally flop. And by the way, I don't even think Battlefield 5 was a flop, technically. We could talk about that as well. But a game like Andromeda or Battlefield could do really not what they expected it to, and it doesn't matter as much as FIFA faltering a little bit. Because FIFA, Madden are like, that's the king of their portfolio. So, because the overall results aren't as good, investors are basically just paying closer attention. Like I used Andromeda as a comparison. Andromeda didn't do well critically. It didn't do as well as they would have liked from sales. From what we gather, I don't think they ever released the exact units sold, which is also a bad sign because typically they would if it was really good. And nobody cared. Nobody cared when Andromeda flopped. From a money standpoint, like we cared, but I'm talking about like investors from a money standpoint. Nobody cared that Andromeda flopped. The stock price was actually soaring when Andromeda failed for a variety of other reasons. And so it's the reason why I think I'm so alert or so attuned to this now is when things are bad, everyone starts paying attention and they start looking for scapegoats. Like someone was asking me in the comments of my video, do you think there's any credibility to what they're saying? Do you think they're actually right that single player instead of Battle Royale? And I'm like, no. Which is it's a fair question. We should ask that question. Is it actually correct that including single player is bad for sales? I don't think that there's any evidence of that being true, considering Red Dead Redemption 2 set the record for the highest earning entertainment product of all time, beating the Avengers movie, and it's a single player game at launch.
Which they even mention it being a huge competitor to Battlefield 5 in their statement report.
Yeah, which is sort of a contradiction, right? Like Battlefield 5 didn't do well because it's single player and because it lost to this other game, which is single player.
Yeah, I think, what was it? Here, I'm going to look that up real quick, what other games they mentioned.
I mean, so this year was actually a great year for single player. God of War won Game of the Year. Spider-Man was the best-selling PlayStation exclusive in like a long time. Those are all single player games.
It also mentions Fortnite and Call of Duty. Was there I'm surely there's a new Call of Duty game. I just don't remember it.
There was, but Call of Duty did not have single player at all for the first time in a long time.
Weird. Yeah, Fortnite's Fortnite. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I will say, reading it, I was just thinking, like, did it? They really kept harping on Battlefield 5, even though what you're saying, it sounded like FIFA was actually the bigger deal. Like I want to say, like, I think I read more about Battlefield 5 in these, I don't know, let's lowball it to 14 pages, let's say, 14 pages than I did any of the other games they talked about. Like I think they really attribute, at least to their investors, they didn't do very well because of Battlefield 5. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, they in some sense, and this is sort of a hyperbolic statement on my part, but to paint it as clearly as possible, they sort of scapegoated Battlefield 5. They threw it under the bus.
Yeah.
And hidden in all of the other statements are more nuanced factors that were at play. Another one was their expansion of mobile in the Chinese market has not gone as fast as they would have liked. So if you can crack that, like if you can start selling the FIFA mobile app and all of these other different mobile offerings in China, China is a huge mobile market. But sometimes it's tricky, right? Sometimes there's a marketing difference. Sometimes you don't gain as traction as much as you would like. And they talked about that. And that's another reason why things may not have been as good as they would have liked. Mm-hmm. I guess if we're going to stay on sort of like the overall factors for the quarter, the main one, the big one, the one that I'm still meaning to make another video on because it's really, and I think this should be the headline. This should be the number one headline coming out of this, is that microtransactions were down for the first time ever.
Oh.
For the first time ever, like since they've been putting it on the charts, it's gone up every year. Revenue from live services. This is the first time it's essentially flat. It's down 0.4%, which is not it's not really down, but it's the first time it hasn't increased. And that has to be taken. You know, they can attribute it to the fact that Battlefield 5 wasn't as popular as they would have liked, but that's not enough to bring them. Like, they still should have done as well with, just because of FIFA, Madden, all this other stuff, mobile, all this other stuff that they have going on. So for their total live services revenue to be flat, essentially, that to me could be taken as an indicator that the "we hate microtransactions" rhetoric is finally starting to manifest in a tangible way on the actual balance sheet, right? Like, I've said this forever. You can say we hate microtransactions all you want, but when the year-over-year results are just a perfect, steady line of increase, they do not care. Like, Reddit threads do not matter by themselves. YouTube comments do not matter by themselves. All they're going to do is they're going to look at your comments, and it could be a 10,000 upvotes and all the goals you want on Reddit, and then they're going to look at their earnings, and they're just going to see, like, well, the numbers show that microtransactions are more popular than ever because people keep buying them. Mm-hmm. So this is the first time that I think, okay, maybe this "we hate microtransactions" talk could start to become real, but it's going to need to happen several more quarters in a row before EA really starts to consider whether or not they have to change anything.
If you could give an estimate of how long that would be, what would you give?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it would have to be, because they've been pushing this. Probably around 2011 is when they started using the live services term. And I'm not, like, every single year, every single quarter, they've just increased. It's like, if you had something that was winning for 7-8 years, you wouldn't abandon it because of 6 months of poor performance, right? You would say, okay, this is going to turn around. This is going to get back to what we were used to. There would need to be tons of social media campaign pressure and rhetoric. That does help if it matches with the numbers. Because they will start to look. When something starts going the wrong direction, like, oh crap, our sales are going down on microtransactions, what the hell's happening? And they see huge campaigns on social media, they may start to say, first they're going to say, let's just push it harder, right? Let's just try and get those people that do like live services stuff to buy more. And then they'll try and say, let's just disguise it a little bit. Let's just shift the marketing. Let's see if we can win back people's ideas about live services. And then they'll go to the developers finally and say, what do you guys think are some creative ways that we could mix in? It's live services, but it's live services like you've never seen before. All of this takes place over the course of several months, a couple of years, until eventually they reach a point where they say, maybe we should start to think of a new model. And even then, it could be more like 3 years before they actually understand what that is.
Yeah. I would even say, like, we've seen, like, hints of that already, because I know they've talked about, I already forgot what EA game it was. I know it's not Anthem, I will say, but they're like, oh, we don't have loot boxes, but they had, like, loot boxes named something else. God, I forgot what it was now.
Yeah, they have mystery crates.
Yeah, something like that. It's like, no, we have mystery crates. It's like, all right, come on now.
Look, the older public still has tons of loot boxes, and it's crazy that nobody remembers that.
Wait, which game was this?
The Old Republic.
Oh, yeah, I never touched that, so. Which they named, I have not heard much of the new Star Wars game, but they kept saying that, like, oh, we have a Star Wars game coming out, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and you're going to be a Jedi, and it's going to be so cool. And one line made me, like, laugh out loud. It was like, yeah, we played a really amazing 20 minutes.
Oh, that was so...
20 minutes? Are you kidding me?
That was so hilarious. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I heard Andrew Wilson talk about the fact, like, oh, yes, so I got to experience it myself last night or something like that. And I was like, oh,
wait, whoa, what is this accent? What is this?
I don't know what I just did there. Sorry, Andrew
Is
Wilson.
he Australian? What is this?
He's Angaran. You can't tell what the fucking Angaran accent is, honestly. So anyway, that's my Andrew Wilson impersonation.
We'll continue on with the Andrew Wilson impersonation.
No, so he said that he played it, and I was like, okay, well, like that's kind of encouraging, right? Maybe he actually plays these games from time to time. And then Blake Jorgensen talked about it, and when he was in the middle of that statement, he's just like, yeah, we got to play it. We played about 20, and like it's going in slow motion, and I'm a gamer. So when I hear someone say that they tried a game and they say 20, I'm going hours, right? Like you can experience like the first few acts of a game in 20 hours, and he goes minutes, and I'm just like, what the fuck, bro?
Like, I think the first few minutes, like 20 minutes of any Dragon Age game is just like a cutscene, you know?
Yeah,
like,
that's not even including character creator, right? Like, if your past character, if you use a default character, like, you might get into the map.
Yeah, really. Like, oh, what was it? Oh, God. And like, I imagine it's not like they just sat him down and, like, were quiet the entire time. He was probably just, like, killed a couple of bad guys and was talking to people for that 20 minutes. So, I guess he played for 20 minutes. So he was really talking about is this going to be fun for people who know what the fuck games are?
Yeah,
how do I press the A button?
Which button do I press to make money? No, I honestly think that they did not play it, right? But they were probably shown 20 minutes of highlights. That's honestly what I got in my head. I
would expect that. But it was like, they were so proud of the Star Wars game they played for 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, maybe this is... maybe for investors who are like, oh, 20 minutes. Yeah, 20 minutes. That sounds reasonable. And like everyone else reading this goes, wait, what the fuck did you do in 20 minutes?
Yeah, it's like, why would you even mention that? It's just, yeah.
Like, that's shorter than the Anthem live streams that I already feel is too short, you know? Like,
yeah.
whatever.
So just giving that total picture, right? Like, the quarter didn't do well because FIFA was just slightly below the increase that they thought it was going to be. Chinese market mobile was a little bit trickier than they thought. I would throw in there that they didn't have, well, this is more for the year, not for the quarter. They could have had more releases. And then according to them, Battlefield 5 was moved into a more competitive quarter, which I think is legitimate. I think that that's true. And then I would put this last. It sounds like they're putting it first. According to them, Battlefield 5 having single player instead of Battle Royale at launch was a mistake. Mm-hmm. So when you look at all of those things together, again, what is the takeaway for Bioware and for Bioware fans? I think on my side of the house, it's just more like, because they were so explicit about single player being bad and Battle Royale being good, I think that's to me that's significant that's indicative of a corporate strategy that they're going to push forward with. What I would mix into that is the Jason Schreier report from a few months ago saying that Dragon Age 4 had its development rebooted specifically to include more live services elements. That's where I stand on it. I think the opposite of that is, okay, realistically, there are a bunch of other factors that contributed to the fact that the quarter was bad, and they're essentially scapegoating Battlefield 5, but they know it's actually these other things, and single player obviously isn't a detriment to sales. It's just that was the easy thing that they could throw out there for Battlefield, and it's really just specific to that, and Dragon Age and Bioware are going to be totally fine. It's got nothing to do with them.
Mm-hmm. So what are you like to people who like having themselves comforted? If you could project, based on what you just read today, what a Dragon Age 4 would look like, what are those live services?
That's a great question. I mean, that's a great question because so far there's only really been two things that Well, I'll take that back. Let's include 3 things that BioWare has done as it relates to, let's just say, online multiplayer things. Because live services can also just be DLC for single player, but I don't think that's enough for EA anymore. I think the fact that Inquisition had multiplayer, the fact that Mass Effect 3 and Andromeda have multiplayer, the fact that Anthem is inherently multiplayer, shows that there's a progression there, right? They want it to be more integrated, not just on the side. If I had to guess, we would want to look at what has BioWare done in the past, which is you've got the PvE sort of wave-based co-op that's just on the side. That's Mass Effect 3, Andromeda, Inquisition. That's the type of multiplayer that they've done. There is a fully integrated sort of MMO light situation that has story, but it's also heavily multiplayer focused in Anthem. That's something else that they've done. And what I would throw in there as the third one, which a lot of people might forget or not remember, is basically just drop in, drop out co-op, which is what they had done for, oh God, was it Neverwinter Nights or was it Baldur's Gate 2?
I haven't played either.
So Neverwinter Nights, if I'm not mistaken, had multiplayer. It had drop in, drop out co-op, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, okay, so yeah, it was Neverwinter Nights. Sorry, everyone who's a more long-time BioWare fan than me. It was Neverwinter Nights. And that was essentially just, you could just drop in and play in your friend's campaign. So those are the 3 things that they've actually done with multiplayer. I would venture that if Dragon Age 4 was going to have some element, it would be one of the things that they've already done. And since I don't think that the multiplayer on the side is going to be acceptable for EA anymore, I don't think they would make it Anthem-like. So I'm kind of leaning a little more towards drop in, drop out co-op.
Which that sounds fine for a Dragon Age game. Even if they had another multiplayer again, and even though I wasn't really into that, I honestly didn't even touch multiplayer until we've been doing it on these live streams. I would be okay with that, you know? I still really liked Inquisition, even though it had these multiplayer elements. I think what people are worried about is the more direct quote that people might get out of at least the first part of this was, we want to make a single player. We don't want any more of those single players in our games. We want Battle Royale, we want to make Dragon Age a Battle Royale, which I just don't think they would even do, because that just feels so counterintuitive to what Dragon Age fans want, or even what the game is selling itself as. Although that being said, is there any fantasy Battle Royale games? I've only think of guns,
I'm so ill-informed about what the Battle Royale catalog is at this point, and they're popping up everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if there was, to be quite honest.
Yeah. I feel like maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm an old woman now, but I feel like the Battle Royale thing is a fad. It feels more fad to me than an actual, this is going to be more permanent. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. So, I can't imagine they sit there with Dragon Age and go, you know what this needs? Battle Royales. And then 3 years from now, whenever it comes out, it's all dead. Oh, we fucked up. I really just don't think they'd do that. So
yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it's as dire as it sounds. I think you could be worried about the amount of what they do for live services and what that could possibly mean in regards to the amount of what's the term? Not penny pinching, but I don't know, nickel and dime. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. How much nickel and dime they try to do. At least Inquisition had the item packs, which Dragon Age 2 had 100 item packs. It was kind of insane. So I don't know if they'll just do that again, which I'm not thrilled about, but I would much rather have that than multiplayer. So
yeah, I don't think it's likely that they would put a Battle Royale in Dragon Age. But I also am not ruling it out. I really don't put it past EA to be that stupid. I don't think it's impossible anymore. And I would have said prior to this earning call that it's flat out impossible. Now I would just say it's unlikely.
No, I don't know. I'm still on the impossible, because that just doesn't make any sense. Because I feel they they only want to like slightly copy for like the successes of Fortnite and whatever, and like guns is a huge part of that. And with Dragon Age, you just can't do that. You could do some swords, and you could do some bows and arrows and stuff like that, and maybe magic, but like you're not gonna get the core group of people who like battle royale games. You know, like Michael's played a couple battle royale games. He actually was playing Apex Legends. He liked PUBG. He's not a Fortnite fan or anything, but he's not one of those scum. No, I'm kidding. But like he hates magic and bows and arrows and swords, and like a lot of our friends that like this type of games don't like that either. So I feel like the people who like battle royale games and people that like Dragon Age games, if you made a Venn diagram, it's just two circles not overlapping with each other. If it is, it's just like boop, like very tiny. You know, like I just don't think the market's really there for that kind of game. So I don't think they do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do not think that's not my official prediction that I would put on the record. I definitely don't think it's likely. And you just laid out one of the great, like, logical reasons why it wouldn't work. I'm painting a very narrow cone of probability for this, for all of the reasons that are not logical and don't make sense, right? Like, I think there's a very narrow cone of probability for this based entirely on EA stupidity. Like, I think, and it's small, I don't think it's likely, because I think that if there's one goddamn argument that BioWare should be able to win, it should be able to, this is not a good setting for Battle Royale, we will give you something else. And sell them on something else to just scathe off the Battle Royale trend. The only reason why I think it's possible is EA just insisting on it. Like, I think Apex Legends looks interesting, and I think by all accounts, people that have played it seem to like it. But it is also interesting, right? Like, Titanfall 2 had a really strong single player. It didn't do well, and they kind of mentioned that as well.
Yeah, they did, actually.
During the call, and it's just so interesting how everything gets framed, right? It's like Titanfall 2 didn't do very well. You know, maybe there were some marketing mistakes on our part, etc. They do mention that they thought they could have found a better creative center for the campaign. Okay, that's one thing. But then they just go on to be like, they're not directly connecting the dots, which I think they do on purpose. But essentially what they say is like, yeah, games like Titanfall 2 were really great. They got tons of critical acclaim. They didn't do very well on sales. Like, I wonder why that is. We want everyone to be really excited for the extension of the Titanfall universe with this Battle Royale game, Apex Legends. And it's like, they don't connect it exactly, but it's like, do they just think that's the solution to everything?
Well, I do think that, like, I don't know if we actually talked about this at the beginning, and now I kind of want to make it clear. What this thing is, for people who don't know business very well, this is EA going in front of representatives to their investors, so the people who give their money to make them stuff, and they essentially just say, by the way, we really fucked up this past year, but we're making it better. So, of course, they're going to try to suck these guys' dicks, you know? Like,
sure.
The whole point of this is a show and dance to say, like imagine, like, you're going to your parents and you did something really wrong. Like, you know you did something wrong. Like, oh, mom and dad really messed up. But here's how I'm going to make it better. Don't ground me. Holy shit, don't take your money. Like, you know, you're trying to, like, dance your way out of the situation. And reading this, it really did feel like it's almost like a compliment sandwich type of thing. You start like, well, we had a really strong year for whatever. Oh, by the way, we really fucked up with this marketing with Titanfall 2. But we think the new game's good. Like, and they just really focus on, like, one sentence on the thing they did bad, and then, like, just a long-winded nothing of, like, what they want to fix in the future. And even, like, the things they want to fix in the future is kind of, like, airy and immaterial. And it's kind of like there's an idea there, I guess. Like, I feel like in the background there's definitely more information. They know how they fucked up. They're not going to tell their investors that. So yeah.
No, I mean that's a good. I guess, like, for people that aren't familiar, giving the background of that is always, like, the weird tone of these calls, in particular in the Q&A, which is really fun to listen to. Because, you know, it's like
there's one that, like, called him out on it too. Hold on, I want to see what that guy's name. You keep going.
It's an interesting dynamic between, like, you're the CEO of a company, you're the CFO of the company, you're the leaders, like, you're the boss of this company. You answer to the investors, but you don't at the same time, right? Like, what they can do is, you know, not invest as much or etc. Like, you're accountable to them, but also you're still the leader. And so I always find the dynamic very interesting during Q&A. But yeah, I've always thought that these are interesting. If people don't like listen to them or read them, I find them interesting. Yes, there are some things that are just basically they're delivering results, right? Like they're delivering numbers, so they're actually talking about what the numbers were for the quarter. But then there's also the rationale behind it, right? Here's why we think this happened. Here's what we are planning for the future, and that is always where you try and glean some information as a gamer about okay, what's going to be happening potentially with any games that are being published by EA. And since Bioware is our beat, I've always sort of tried to pay attention to these.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what to talk about now.
It's also another fun little thing here for anyone that, again, doesn't pay that much attention to these. It's always interesting to just be reminded, like, how big money owns everything. Like it's a normal tradition on a variety of different earnings calls where like Goldman Sachs always goes first, and then maybe like Merrill Lynch, and it's just always it's a weird pecking order, and you kind of forget that like you wouldn't think Goldman Sachs has anything to do with video games. It's like Goldman Sachs has so much fucking money. They just have everything to do with everything.
Yeah, I was surprised to like hear the names of the representatives here because I pretty much have heard of all of them.
Oh yeah,
like it's well, yeah, you say Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch.
Yeah.
I'm just scrolling through this here. Oppenheimer and Company Research Division. Like
it's big money is everywhere.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't it be, right? The video game industry is more profitable or generates more revenue than the movie industry.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't these names be in there? I don't know what you make of that, if anybody makes anything of that. I'm always kind of reminded, like, oh yeah, big money is everywhere.
Even in our little corner of the universe.
Another thing that I would mention, and this is, again, it's a little bit of information. I might be reading into it more than some other people, but it really got my attention, was the fact that they said they are going to... This concerned me, right? So I'm trying to remember if this was during a Q&A or if this was just during... No, I think...
Was this the one they're, like, changing our strategies or whatever?
So it touches onto the change in marketing strategies, but before they addressed that in the Q&A, Andrew Wilson said... quote, we've made creative changes, including formation of a creative council to strengthen our creative decision making. And we will continue to make refinements in each of these dimensions as we focus sharply on et cetera, et cetera. I'm not sure exactly what he meant by that. He sort of said that after he talked about Battlefield, after he talked about FIFA, and I'm not sure what he means by a creative council to strengthen creative decision-making. Does he mean creative decision-making on a publisher level, on an executive level, like creative as in creative marketing or creative distribution strategies, or like creative where? Because if he means creative as in we're going to make a council to sort of like act as more of a go-between between publisher desire and developers, that's gonna fucking suck.
Yeah,
that's not a good thing. That would not be a good thing, and I don't know that that's what it is because they didn't elaborate nearly enough on it, and I wish that they had. But there was a question from one of the investors about essentially about the fact that Titanfall 2 and Battlefield 5 had good ratings but didn't do well from a sales standpoint. Mm-hmm. And Andrew Wilson talked about, let me see if I can find the particular section here. What he says is what we've done is gone back and built a far more robust process around how we find our creative center. This is it, right? So he talked about how Battlefield and Titanfall could have had a better creative center for their campaign. Mm-hmm. So he's saying this, and this is connected to the single player aspect of it, right? Essentially, when he's talking about creative center. So he says, we've gone back and built a far more robust process around how we find our creative center. It's called the reason to play. And Chris Bruzzo, our CMO, and his entire chief marketing officer, and his entire organization have restructured the entire marketing conversation from the inception of game development through full campaign. And we expect that this will put us in a significantly better position on a go-forward basis. You could take that as just being about changing the marketing, but to me, that sounds more like marketing seeping into the development process. I mean, that's essentially what he is saying. Mm-hmm. Is that they're going to build marketing by sort of getting into the inception of game development. Mm-hmm. None of that sounds good to me, right? That and if you look at the if you start taking all of these disparate statements and connecting them together, when they talk about reason to play, that sounds well and good, like have a really strong reason to come back to the game every day. And if it was just you and me talking about it, we would be like, yeah, like great storytelling and characters and stuff that just want to make it's your reason to play. But that's not what EA talks about as their strategy, right? Their reason to play is new content through live services all the time. Mm-hmm. So if you try and put those two things together, it's like, I don't think that their reason to play is going to be a really dynamic cinematic story. Their reason to play that they're going to want in every one of their games is going to be something related to live services. And that's not too far off from the way that Bioware talked about Anthem early on. Like, I want to say that they may have even used words like reason to play in a repetitive manner, not just like offhandedly. I think that was part of their vernacular for talking about Anthem early on. Mm-hmm. Which, I don't know. I mean, if people are just very excited about Anthem, I guess that's fine. But the whole idea of this is an online world, every time you turn it on, something new is going to be going on, that's neat, but that's not why I play games. And I don't know that that's why a lot of Bioware fans play games. We play games for a strong branching narrative that's based on player choice.
Well, I also think that, like, Anthem isn't for us, you know?
No, it's true.
They don't want us. They want the people that come back every day and, like, you know, the people that, you know, have the microtransactions and give them money and trying to get a whole new market that they just don't have right now. Because at least, like, Dragon Age has been a fairly decent series, but it hasn't gotten huge, you know? Mm-hmm. It's not huge. It's not that big.
Yep.
And I think a part of that is a reason is because the market that has really attached to Dragon Age is, let's just be honest, women and LGBT groups. And hey, guess what? We're the minorities, guys. we you know, we're probably not that big, you know? Like, of course it hasn't sold that well. There you know, there's and with Mass Effect was pretty huge, but like it still wasn't that big. Like they have some pretty tiny IPs all considering. But yeah, so they're really aiming for Anthem to be everybody else. So I don't think they're going to give up on Dragon Age and Mass Effect, but I think Anthem's going to be like the, I almost want to say the security blanket for Bioware, that like they can continue making the Mass Effect and the Dragon Age, but as long as Anthem's going well, EA's going to give them the pat on the back and a lollipop and say, another year, kid. You know, like.
I like this imagery of the lollipop.
It's kind of like gross. It's like those ones at the like grocery store counters that no one ever buys, and it's been there for 10 years, and it's like cake flavored. But
I just imagine, because I imagine it as Casey Hudson, just like with a tucked in polo shirt and a backpack and a fucking hat with the propeller on top.
And he goes, "Thanks, Daddy Andrew Wilson. I appreciate this."
Aye, chap, goddamn, make Anthem 2.
What is this accent?
I don't know.
Oh, God.
It's so bad, it's good. At least that's what I'm going to tell myself.
I do want to say that is the exact same voice he used for Tamar, and now I'm just thinking as Tamar as the CEO of EA. And that fits somehow.
She's the new EA CEO.
Oh my God, we should have one of the, maybe the warden is Andrew Wilson, you know?
Oh, this could be interesting.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's another day. Okay. If you have no idea what we're talking about, you should check out our streaming channel, Codex Added, found on YouTube.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess there's an optimistic way to look at this, which is basically that this is really localized to Battlefield. It's localized to this most recent quarter. Things are going to normalize. Things will stabilize. You know, sales for FIFA will pick back up. The mobile market will do good. Madden will do good. The Star Wars game will do good. which interestingly enough is single player, but I mentioned this in my video. It doesn't really matter because it's Star Wars, right? It's a licensed property. It's going to come out probably in the window of the movie. It doesn't even count as a normal original IP single player.
Well, real quick on the Star Wars game, the one that came out recently, Star Wars Battlefront, is that it?
Battlefront 2, yeah.
Battlefront, yeah. Did that do well, even if it was Star Wars? Or no, did it?
It did well. It did well,
okay.
but it wasn't. It was not as much of a smash success as they would have hoped, given its proximity to the movie, etc. It did well though. Like there was a ton of controversy, obviously, around the microtransactions and the stupid Reddit comment and all this other stuff. So people, I think, sort of claimed a victory over Battlefront that wasn't legitimate, because when you listen to those earnings calls, it was like, no, it did well. I remember them saying that, and this was shocking, right? The projections for what they had for that quarter as a company were spot on for microtransactions revenue. Wow. And I remember listening to that and just going, that's when it really hit me, right? Like, none of this shit matters. When people get upset on Twitter and Reddit and there's outrage, like, yeah, you can downvote their comment on Reddit more times than any other comment in the history of Reddit, and it did diddly shit to their revenue. Like, it didn't matter, because even if they did turn off microtransactions in Battlefront for a time, FIFA, Madden, like, fuck your face, it doesn't matter. We're just going to rake in money with those things.
But we have been seeing some of that, at least according to this quarter, which
yes.
is a small, very, very small dip, but a little boop.
Finally. And that's encouraging to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I do want to go back to one thing that you said about the Dragon Age market, the Mass Effect market. Do you really think that's what it is? That it's the demographics that are attracted to the fantasy genre?
I don't know, because like it's something I don't know, it's been kind of on my mind ever since we talked about the gender episode, which is over a year ago maybe, where a lot of reports came out that like women just tend to like fantasy games more than men, and then in the past couple of years, like there's been a very small amount of fantasy games coming out, and like I have seen people say like, oh, they don't want to release it because no one's going to buy it, and like I feel like there probably is more than just, oh, the girls are buying it, so that's why they're not making it. But like a part of me wonders if maybe that's not like even a piece of it, a significant piece of it. Because like I prefer fantasy games. I would play a game with much more fantasy elements than I ever would something with like guns and shooting, and that there's just really not that many, particularly AAA games out there. And you get some like indie games, and some indie games can be very good, like Divinity and what's the one I haven't bought yet? Deadfire.
Pillars of Eternity.
Pillars of Eternity, yeah. That like are like something I really want to play, but like they're few and far between, I feel like, or at least I haven't even heard about them.
Real quick divergence. Did you see my tweets about Outward?
Oh, I saw it, but I didn't get a chance to look at it. What is that?
I will talk about it for way too long. I don't want to derail us. Just go check it out. It looks so good.
Okay. What I heard, I saw like on your, because I was, where was I? I think it was like at a restaurant or something. What I saw was like, I can't look at a YouTube video in the middle of like Arby's or whatever the fuck I was.
Yeah.
So I couldn't see it. But what is the game?
It's a fantasy RPG. That's just basically, I wouldn't even say full open world. They have 5 really big maps, but it's essentially just the idea of like survival elements. Magic is hard to do. Branching storyline, dialogue choice, create your own character. Just like, it looks like a really cool indie fantasy RPG that has a lot of different like realistic elements in it.
Yeah. I guess like what I've seen, like look at Final Fantasy 15 that came out. That motherfucker had cars and guns. Where was my fantasy in that bullshit? You know where it was? It was in the incomprehensible story that made no goddamn sense. They decided to have a pop star boy band with a car. What was that game? I haven't even played it because it just makes me mad. Anyway, but yeah, I guess I want more fantasy games, and I don't know if it's just they didn't sell well, and so they just went to sci-fi and it's been selling well, and there you go, and just everyone who likes fantasies like, who did big tough shit. I wonder if that is a part of the resurgency of why D&D is getting so popular, because people want that fantasy. They're just not getting their video games; they're going to tabletops.
And CRPGs are also kind of filling that gap.
Yeah.
I agree that in the past, let's say 3 years, 4 years, it's been really light on releases. But then, I guess the caveat to this is, why does Skyrim sell like gangbusters, and why did Witcher 3 do pretty damn well? Like why is that exactly?
I don't know, because fantasy definitely has its moments, but like no one ever wants to make a fantasy game. I don't get it. Maybe it's something that we're not quite getting. Like, I know Dragon Age Inquisition was made with oh god, what was that engine called? Frostbite, and that wasn't really made like that. Wasn't that like the first fantasy game on a Frostbite engine? Like, it definitely was not made for that. Like, how many other engines are like there that like game companies are forced to use that like just couldn't really figure out how to make a good fantasy game on it, so they just didn't. You know?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of like. You're right. There just have not been a lot of fantasy setting games that have come out. Kingdom Come Deliverance is not fantasy, but you would think it's even more of a narrow potential fan base, right? Like, it's realistic, historically accurate, medieval 14th century Bohemia. And I don't think they've ever released exact numbers, but I know that what did they sell? They did 1 million in the first few days, 1 million units. And I think they sold a few million units. Which is quite good for the size of their team and everything.
Yeah.
They're going to make a sequel, right? It did well enough to garner a sequel.
Whereas I think, like, what was it? Pillars of Eternity actually was a loss, right? Like, it didn't technically do well.
Pillars 2 did not sell well, which is really unfortunate. That's really unfortunate because it's quite a good game.
Which I wonder how part of that, because the reason I haven't got it yet is because I played Divinity, and Divinity is such a huge game that I'm still not technically done with it. So I kind of want to finish it before I get into Pillars of Eternity. But so it came second, so poor Pillars got screwed.
Yeah,
because all of its audience is playing Divinity.
And then, if I'm not mistaken, Dragon Age Inquisition was the best. It was touted as the best launch ever for Bioware, which means it would have been better than Mass Effect 2 and 3. So there's evidence out there that there's a good reason to do fantasy, but and yet, despite all that evidence, for the past few years, they've been few and far between.
I don't know. Like, sometimes I feel like when there's a lack of things, the game industry takes a couple years, and then there's like a whole bunch of them. So I wonder if like a couple of years from now, then like E3 2022 or whatever, it's just like all fantasy games, and I'm just gonna be rolling in it. Well, at that point, I'll probably have kids, so I'll just be crying like, I have no time. My God. But so yeah. Anyway,
do you know what I think it could be? Also, is like you mentioned that it takes a few years off and then it comes back. Is it really just that Bethesda comes out with an Elder Scrolls game and then everybody tries to play catch up and copy it?
But it's been like 6 years since. More than that, actually. Then like 8 years since Skyrim came out. Like, that's like there's been, you could release 2 very big games in that part.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, another thing I wanted to kind of, because we kind of got on the demographics and then got off of it. There was a particular controversy around Battlefield 5 and the cover. And the one of the, I can't remember if that character was the protagonist or one of the major NPCs, etc. But the inclusion of a female character, she's on the cover if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. Some people didn't take kindly to that. They phrased their opposition as being under the guise of historical accuracy and whether or not women would have been on the front lines. Other people said that was just like a dog whistle and covering up for misogynistic complaints. Take that as you will. I don't think we have to necessarily take that apart. But from the financial standpoint, do you think that was part of what it was?
That's a really good question.
And a fucking scary one to answer.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants the answer to be yes.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, because, like, it could be. But I always felt like there wasn't... Maybe because I'm in my own little bubble on Twitter, and on maybe even Reddit. But, like, I always feel like someone would say something, and then, like, 1,000 more people would be like, this is bullshit. Like, I felt like it was a lot more people yelling, but they were actually very, like, it was, like, a loud minority. Like, not that many people actually cared. That's what I thought it actually was. Kind of like the same amount of people that were angry about the, women in Battlefield 5 was the same amount of people who were upset that the Ghostbusters were women rather than it was just a shitty Ghostbusters movie, which I will forever be angry at that. That's a whole other story.
Mm-hmm.
But, so I want to say no, but like at the same time, like maybe I don't really know. That's a good question, and I wonder if they have any, what would be the best way to determine statistically how to find out that answer?
It's not going to be good. Like from a data-driven standpoint, what's going to end up happening is they're just going to compare it to the covers that don't have women on them, which is all of them. And so it's not really going to be, it's not a very robust analysis that you can do unless you have good survey numbers.
Now wasn't the cover, it wasn't like all of them, it was only like special edition or something like that.
Well,
wasn't that it?
Now we got
like there was certain editions that had her on.
Now we got to look it up. No, I think, no, I'm sorry. Okay, so the main cover is our female character. The deluxe edition has the male on it.
Ah, that's it.
So I can just imagine the reaction to that, right? Because that's going to be framed as pay more money to get the cover with the dude on it. Which, if you play Battlefield games, and I liked Bad Company too. I've played a few Battlefield games here and there. Bad Company is probably the one that had the best story out of any of them, where you actually cared about that little crew or whatever. But otherwise, who gives a shit what's on the cover of Battlefield? Like, they may as well just put a gun on the cover of Battlefield, because that's all you ever see when you're playing the game anyway.
Honestly, though, if you put a gun to my head and say, Caitie, I need you to describe what the covers of when you go into EA Origin of what each Dragon Age game is, I don't think I could tell you. Like,
really?
I'd never go into EA Origin. I just always open up the little icon on my computer. Like, I just have a shortcut and I use that. I don't fucking know, man. When was the last time I went on Origin? I try to avoid that like the plague because it sucks,
Yeah. Okay, I can see where you're coming from on that. Yeah, I just don't.
Yeah, like the only time you probably would have seen that lady would be when you bought the game.
Yeah.
And that's it.
But
maybe like I don't know if she's also on the splash screen, like when you open it up, and like I'm sure
probably.
she's actually in the game.
Yeah.
But
well,
yeah, I don't know.
Covers would have mattered a lot more in the age of physical, but another thing that we learned from the earnings call is that digital downloads now represent 73% of revenue, which is an all-time high for them.
Yeah, I would imagine that, especially for PC users, it's almost 100%. Because, like, do you have a disk drive? I don't have a disk drive.
Yeah, no,
I haven't
exactly.
had a disk drive in 5 years.
Yep.
More than that.
That's exactly it. And then also there's rumors that there's going to be a digital only the next Xbox. The next gen Xbox is going to have a different SKU that's cheaper and is digital only if you want to get that.
Granted, I don't have a console, but I hear how things go, and especially with like updates and stuff like that, you really like you buy it like an Xbox or a PlayStation game, you open it up, you toss the disc to the side maybe, and there's like a code or whatever, or the CD acts as a code, and then you download it, and then as soon as you're done, who cares about the fucking CD? You can just re-download the game online now. Like the CD really doesn't matter anymore, does it?
Honestly, and this is like a totally different rant. A new game on console sucks so bad. It sucks so bad. The experience is so fucking terrible. That used to be an advantage for consoles, is that you could put the disc in and play right away, whereas PC you had to install it. I'm not joking. I can download and install full games from Steam faster than Xbox One X. This is the highest end. Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro install the game from disc, and then I have to download a 10 gigabyte patch anyway. And it's like, you wait 2 hours from the start of the process until you actually get to play.
I'll be honest, I don't get consoles anymore. Like, I think the only plus for consoles is any exclusives you have if you don't know anything about computers and you don't want to deal with buying one. Like, you can buy probably a decent computer with the same amount of money you're going to get buying a console, I feel like. I was able to play Mass Effect 3 about like 6 months after it came out with my shitty 2010 laptop. Like, if I can do that with a shitty laptop,
yep.
And like, you can play on PC. Maybe you're not playing top graphics, maybe, but I feel like that's such the hassle with consoles. I just don't get it. You can't mod, and like there's also I don't know. I am definitely a PC person just because there's so much customization, and like I feel like consoles are kind of losing the war, so to speak.
That's true.
I don't know.
From what I understand, the numbers bear that out, that the PC market is growing faster than it ever has before. And it's now, and which is odd because like you look at stuff like the interface for Anthem and it's just like, what the hell? If PC gamers are the majority, which at this point it's very close to that being the case, why are we always getting stuck with stuff that's clearly made for consoles?
Yes. Oh my god, yes. Like, even with just Dragon Age Inquisition, which I think did the, I'm going to say, the porting a lot better than Anthem did, because that Anthem was, some of those UIs are just really bad with keyboard and mouse, but like, good lord. Even Inquisition at times, I'm like, ugh. This fucking UI, because like everyone really liked in Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, you're able to have like a whole bunch of powers, and then in Inquisition it's like you can only have 8, and that was because you had to play it on console because you only have so many buttons. Right. And when you play on console, it's still kind of like a. Did you ever play Inquisition with a controller? Of course you have, yeah. But like I hate like having to toggle like the front ability, back ability. So I can't imagine having more than 8. But while I play on the computer, I'm like, I want like 600 slots here.
Yeah, exactly.
God. Which I will say, like, the only good thing a console can give you nowadays that a computer can't possibly is that a computer is that you have to sit at your desk, and with console you can sit on your couch. But my husband and I guess Steam Link did do really well. So it's like maybe like a year ago, Steam Link was on sale. I think you only had to pay for shipping, so we got it for like $8. It was insanely cheap, and we have loved that thing to death. Oh my gosh. Like, I was able to get it working with Origin games. It's actually a pretty simple fix. And like, I've been playing Inquisition on my couch now, so it's like, who console who? I don't know her. Like,
100%.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
Yeah, like I can sit there on my couch with a beautiful modded Dragon Age Inquisition game, and it's just like I had a console. And it only took me $8 plus my computer. But like,
yeah.
Of course you wouldn't do that. That's so much better than a console. Anyway, that's my rant today. We traveled some places today, topic-wise.
Console folks, we sound like snobs, don't we? PC Master Race.
Look, I grew up with console only because I really enjoyed the consoles I had growing up, but I just don't get it now. Which I get it, there's a money issue, but I still feel like just saving up for a nice, and like, it doesn't even have to be super high end, but just like a decent PC is just gonna be worth your money more than a console would be. Because like, think of all those poor people who bought Dragon Age Inquisition on the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox 360, I think, and they just totally got fucked over when Trespasser came out. Like, oh, sorry, the best DLC. Can't have it. Hope you have to go buy another one. And a lot of people did actually upgrade their consoles just to play the end of the game. But for PCs, you were fine. maybe it kind of ran kind of chunky, but you could play it.
Yeah. Now, that being said, when those exclusives come around, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Spider-Man, The Last of Us, it's killer. I have consoles only for this reason, because those games are so fucking good.
But if you're patient, give it a couple years, there's going to be one of those illegal ports. I'm just saying, it's going to happen one day.
Oh yeah, it might.
You can play like pretty much any games that I had as a kid on the PC now, and those were never ported to the PC, like stuff from Nintendo, you know, like.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you're patient with it, you'll get it eventually. But I get, like, I would definitely want to play Horizon Zero Dawn and a couple other things, but like I don't. So anyway, but yeah, I think the only reason consoles is even good is because of some of the exclusives, and they definitely should hog those. And God forbid, I'm gonna be so mad if for whatever reason, because I know EA and Microsoft kind of like to do their thing for a little bit. I'm gonna be so mad if Dragon Age goes to Xbox only. I'm gonna fucking riot. Golly.
All right, so I guess what are our takeaways from this top level? You know, having talked through all the different things that were on the earnings call, what is your takeaway for Bioware, for Dragon Age, and the future of single player with Bioware?
I guess in my mind, thinking of Dragon Age only, I'm not worried. That sounded a weird way. I'm really not worried for the game at all. I think you should be suspicious, but I think that's different than worried. Like, I feel like something maybe could come out of this for Dragon Age 4, and maybe even the possibility of other games in Bioware, but I'm not necessarily thinking it's it could be something, but I don't think it's something yet. You know, like it's a warning sign, but I don't think we need to like raise the alarms. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah.
I think that's very sensible.
Mm-hmm. So I know reading some of the comments in your video, someone was like, I want to please make a podcast about this because I want to be comforted, I think was around, I'm paraphrasing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I at least like talking to you about it and like watching your video and like actually reading the thing, even though my brain was going, oh, what the fuck? And like trying to figure it out. Like it's my eyebrow was raised and I go, huh, that's kind of odd. And then just, I feel like we need to wait a little bit more before we like, start making those change.org positions or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, because those are always effective.
Yeah. Can I say, sorry, this is really off topic. Maybe this is better for the mobile games one, but they're making like my beloved Sailor Moon drops are shutting down, and people are like, there's like 6 or 7 like change.org petitions. I'm like, guys, fucking serious. Like, you can't even at least use the same one anyway.
Oh no.
Anyway, so do you agree with me, or do you?
I guess I'm taking a slightly more pessimistic view. Overall, yes, I think you're right. We don't have enough information to definitively say that Dragon Age is in trouble or that Bioware is in trouble. I think the only thing that I'm doing is attempting to extrapolate a little bit more from what we know, which could totally be, I could just be wrong, right? I mean, it's not concrete on any of this. But if I were to extrapolate a little bit and connect what they're saying to BioWare, specifically because of the Jason Schreier reporting, when he said that the development of DA4 had to be rebooted to add more live services, to me that means that there has this sort of thinking at EA has had a tangible effect on the development of Dragon Age 4. Mm-hmm. I know some people will say that Casey Hudson, quote unquote, clarified that on that report by saying that live elements just meant continuing the story after launch. That's great, except I don't buy that as being a reason to need to reboot development, right? It means that something about the development scheme needed to change significantly because there wasn't enough live services in it, according to EA's liking. Mm-hmm. But the counter to that is, okay, well then what does that look like? And as we sat here and talked about, like, okay, what might that look like? Is it just going to be the multiplayer on the side, like Inquisition? I don't have any problem with that. I loved Inquisition. Is it going to be drop in, drop out co-op? I wouldn't have any interest in that, but as long as I can ignore it and just play the game by myself, then that's totally fine. That's not a problem either, as long as the design isn't being changed to tailor multiplayer. So I think that this sort of rhetoric from EA is going to have an effect on Dragon Age. It's going to have an effect on BioWare, but again, I still think it's very, very, very unlikely that it's going to have a fucking battle royale mode. So at the end of the day, it's like, what negative effect is it going to have? I don't know. I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see what that could be.
I think that's a good point. Like, there's definitely going to be an effect on Dragon Age 4. We just don't know if it's going to be a negative one yet. You know? Like, each of the Dragon Age games has felt extremely differently, to the point where, like, someone actually messaged me. It's like, I really love Dragon Age Inquisition. Should I play the other two if I only want to play Dragon Age Inquisition again? I'm like, no, you shouldn't. Because the other games are nothing like Dragon Age Inquisition. And if it follows suit, Dragon Age 4 is going to be nothing like the other 3 games. And that's okay. That's what we're used to. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be all right. So... I guess that's my takeaway from it. My eyebrows is raised, making that kind of like scrunchy face, but I'm not like worried. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Yep. And you shouldn't either, dear listener. It's going to be all right. Here, come in for a cuddle. Come on. It's okay. It's okay.
That we got to stop there. That's the best way to end the show.
Thank you for awkward cuddles with Caitie. Anyway, Jordan, where can they find you?
They can find me at The Exalted March on YouTube and at The Exalted March on Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit. Where can the folks find you, Caitie?
If you would like more cuddle sessions, I charge $100. No, I'm kidding. You can find me at Ghildirthalen on YouTube. You can find me on Ghildirthalen on Twitter. And if you want to send me a PM on Reddit, I'll probably never get back to you. But if I do, it's at Gillathon. No, Gillathon.
It's a marathon of gills.
Gillanon. There you go. And with that, guys, that's your all.